Crowhill here. Today we review a Bock and ask whether educated people are smarter. Hello and welcome to Beer and Conversation with Pigweed and Crowhill. Good evening, Pigweed.
Good evening, Crowhill.
What's on your mind today?
Well, we talk about politics a lot on this show,
Yes, we do.
and probably too much.
Probably,
but
yeah.
I've got a way to cut down on all of that.
Okay.
Yeah. So, who's right, who's wrong, digging through the minutiae of each subject matter.
Right. It gets tiresome.
I got a shortcut.
Yeah, okay.
The shortcut goes like this. People go to college to get smarter.
Right.
So, who are the smart people voting for? And in the most recent election, it was the college-educated people went 55 to 42 for Joe Biden.
Okay.
So what that tells me is that if the smart people think that the Democrats are most qualified, then we should listen to smart people, because who are you going to listen to? Dumb people?
Well, that's an interesting theory, I guess. But we're going to have to talk about that.
You're not going to ready to close?
I'm not just ready to accept that at face value. So, as a matter of fact, I think I need to drink a beer before we...
I agree.
So this beer has a very complicated name. Bock.
It's just like a car named Car.
Yes, that's what it is. A beer named Bock. Bock is a style. It's a style of German lager, and generally speaking, people assume that Bock beers are dark, but this one really isn't dark. It's not dark at all.
At 6.3, is that right in the...
Yeah, I think that's in the zone for a Bock. Generally speaking, they tend to be maltier and would have, traditional German hops to them. And that's what I get from this. It's not really remarkable. It's a very drinkable, easy beer, but it does have that little bit of a malt kick to it.
Yes, the low in the hop range, it's 24 IBUs. That's really pretty low.
That's pretty low.
So you're tasting,
especially with 6.3%.
You're tasting mostly 6.3. You're tasting mostly malts. And what's our fun fact?
The fun fact is Bavarian monks drank Bock-style beers as a source of nutrition during times of fasting, such as Lent. And beer was known as liquid bread.
And here we are in Lent. And what do you mean don't we still have Bavarian monks? They might still be drinking beers.
They might right now.
They might. This is right today. They might be having a Doppelbock, which is just the same beer, stronger than a 16.
Yes, and that brings back fond memories for you from when we did our.
That was terrible.
We did our beer fast. Yeah,
that was awful. Okay, yeah, very good.
Yeah.
From Guilford Hall
right up the road.
Brewing in Beemore.
In Baltimore. So it is very pleasant, regular sort of a Bock beer. It's not, really doesn't stand out in a whole lot of ways. It's just a very drinkable, good.
Right, it's right down the middle of the style, probably.
Right, yeah, very good. All right, so this whole question of does being educated make you smarter? I frequently find myself saying you have to be educated to be that stupid. So
why don't we take a look at a couple of man on the street interviews that interviewed man on the street and man on campus. And so the one that we just shared with you today was, can men is it menstruate or is menstruate?
Menstruate.
That's a hard thing.
I was honestly surprised that they found a bunch of people. Generally speaking, I have low expectations of people's intelligence, generally speaking. So I wonder how many people did they have to ask before they found somebody who knew what the word menstruate meant?
Right. Yeah. However, what did we find? I mean, on the man on the street or the college educated?
Yeah. Well,
on the campus kids.
Actually, it's a good question both ways. They ask kids on campuses questions like what country borders the United States to the north, and they don't know. So but the man on the street said, "Can men menstruate?" And they were just like, "No."
I almost didn't understand the question.
Right.
But the college educated, they had no problem with the question.
Oh, absolutely.
They were totally comfortable with answering this question.
Yes, because they'd been indoctrinated. Because that's the thing. If suppose you could make an argument. I suppose you could make the argument that people who are well-educated and intelligent should be the ones who determine things. Maybe conceptually. I'm not sure I agree with even that. But let's say you could make that argument conceptually.
Right.
The question is, are colleges doing that?
Right. So would you rather have somebody who's been through medical school operating on you or not? All right. So that's right. But you can't extend that to all of college versus all of not college.
Yes.
Because
frequently people who are geniuses there were all kinds of stories about Einstein walking into closets and things, you know. So you have a lot of people who are very, very smart who don't have a lot of common sense. But
in this case, I love it because it just showed that unless you had been, if you're just operating with the normal brain that God gave you, then you almost can't understand the question. Whereas if you've been properly educated into accepting terrible ideas, then you can, you can go on about feelings and and identity and. It was just a great back and forth where the regular guys go, we don't have the parts for that. I mean, it wouldn't make any
doesn't make any sense.
Wouldn't make any sense for that. Oh, but all the college students were like, oh, well, sure.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, I've heard. Well, what would you say to the other? What would you say to the man on the street who disagrees with that? Well, you should educate yourself on what is on trans people.
That whole thing.
I loved it.
That whole thing. You should educate yourself. That's become somewhat of a traditional reply.
Yeah.
You need to educate yourself. What you mean is, I need to read a bunch of things from your point of view. That's what you really mean.
Yes. So let's just, sticking with the same subject, let's say the question was, do you think women's breast milk is as good as men's breast milk?
The question itself is just so...
It would, except according to the British National Health Services, yes, drug-induced breast milk, chest milk from men is comparable to, right? So, I mean, the guy on the street would it wouldn't even know how to answer the question. It was just, his jaw would drop.
Yes.
And you would go, yes, sir, that is the proper response. Whereas people, and this is not gender, gender studies folks, this is from a health.
The health services. And the question that they have to ask there is, how do we get into an environment where people say things that they know are just straightforwardly false, but they feel as if they have to say them?
Well, as we spoke earlier, what about the archaeological?
So I saw this guy.
Yeah.
He was an archaeologist, and he was talking about, if I found a skeleton from a couple hundred years ago, I couldn't tell you if it was a man or a woman. And here's all these people in the audience just going, that's nonsense. Wait, I mean, we know that's
our job. This is one of the things that we do. We do age and sex is where we start off. Okay, this is the 6-year-old boy.
And the guy's, I'm the expert here. I'm the college professor. I'm telling you that.
It's worse than having a single guy that the institutions themselves have said, we need to, have put the word out, put the memo out.
Yeah.
We need to refrain from, because we don't know how the person identified.
Yeah. Or some other equally ridiculous nonsense. And this is all a result of cowardice, because people started saying absurd BS, and people weren't willing to say, no, that's absurd BS. We don't buy it. Cut that out. They start, and they would throw their little childish tantrums. Oh, you have to let me, blah blah blah. And people have been giving into it, and now we're in a situation where absurd BS has become the standard. Everybody has to accept it.
How does this even work? So whoever, I guess there's a head of the archaeology department at university, whatever.
Yeah.
Right? And is he afraid that if he does not go along, there'll be a revolt from below that he will then lose his job and be replaced with somebody who will.
Yeah, so I think
or why can't you just have all of the senior people in the department look at each other and go, we all agree that's stupid, right? Okay, yes.
I think
and then
there
can't be a revolt.
I'm not positive about this, but I think it came in two phases. Phase one was the students themselves, who were a bunch of baby misfits who came in and had their ideas, and they would have their temper tantrums, and they would yell and scream and all this kind of stuff, and they were afraid of upsetting the students because the students would tweet something against them. They would complain to the university.
What is that? They would call in the
diversity officer or something like that.
Yeah, no, but there's even a worse. It's like it's like the offensive police or something. Whatever, But
Right.
go ahead. It'll come.
So I think it started with this being afraid of the students,
right.
But over the years, the students have started to take over the faculty. So that this generation of
bias
morons,
response team.
There you go, bias response team. So I think this generation of baby temper tantrum throwing morons has moved from the student body to some extent into the faculty, and then you have the bias response team and the diversity office and everything else, and if you say something contrary to woke dogma, they're going to crack down on you. It's absolutely ridiculous. People will say things that they know are false because they're just afraid to say the truth.
Yeah, it's emperor's new clothes.
Yes. So when you send children to an institution like that, they're not necessarily children. When
hold on. You're exactly right. What should be young adults are really just overgrown children.
Yes. Yeah, you're supposed to be an adult when you're 18, but it doesn't really happen that way anymore.
Right. So if you said to the man on the street, just sticking with gender for one more question. If you cut off a boy's penis, does he become a girl?
Yeah.
Right? Again, man on the street would be like,
yeah,
you weirdo?
Right.
What are you even talking about? They go, oh, yeah.
Yeah, because that happens to like guys in war and stuff. They get shot in a bad place.
But in a gender clinic, they would say, first off, you don't have to. You just have to say it.
Here's the weird thing.
And then if you really want to go the extra mile of cutting off, now you're, I don't know, you extra woman now?
Here's the weird thing that nobody seems to be able to answer is, how come your parts don't say anything about your gender?
No, they have nothing to do with your gender.
Unless you're cutting them off or changing them, and then they're somehow affirming your gender. Like, how does that happen?
Then you have to cut them off so that your
can affirm
parts can align with your identity. I thought you said that.
I thought you said they're not related. It's so insane that you have to be educated to believe something like that.
That's the theme of the show. Yes. You're exactly right. Would you like to move on to crime?
Yeah. Okay, sure. Yeah. How about is your neighborhood safer when there are fewer cops?
You just ask a guy who lives in a neighborhood with a lot of crime.
Right.
No, not the educated person in the gated community.
Yes.
We're not asking them.
Yeah, go up into some row houses in Baltimore and ask them, is your neighborhood safer when there are fewer cops? We want cops.
Would you feel better
here.
if they were? Would you feel safer?
Yeah.
I mean, that's how they put it.
Yes.
And right, so guy on the streets going, what are you
I've seen those interviews where people go into downtown Baltimore and they go and they ask the 65-year-old lady who has to walk around drug dealers and stuff to get to the corner grocery store to buy her dinner, and do you feel safer when there are fewer cops? She's like, what? No, I'd like a cop to walk me down to the store.
No, you need the AOCs of the world to tell you that having cops around, that we need to, we need to reimagine policing.
Right.
And when there's a guy swinging a machete in the street, you need to bring in grief counselors.
Yeah, right. You have de-escalate. There's some funny word they came up with like some kind of a counselor who goes into a violent situation and tries to talk them out of it.
Yes, I talked to my brother-in-law who's a cop. He's like, I mean, first off, are those people? Are we filled with people who are equipped in doing that?
Right.
So all I have to do is say, all right, we'll just call up this person, and they'll be there at the same time as a cop will, and do a better job than a cop will.
Yeah.
Or where are these people?
If you want to say, let's reduce violent response by police. For example, let's say you want to cut down on police shooting people. You know what the best way to do that is?
No.
Have more male policemen. Women policemen are far more likely to shoot than male policemen, and for very obvious reasons. Male policemen are bigger and stronger. They can handle things without having to shoot. They can tackle the guy, they can wrestle him, they can fight him without having to draw a weapon. The woman who's smaller and she's dealing with some big guy.
Right, that's the equalizer.
Exactly, that's the equalizer. So if you wanted to reduce police shootings, one of the best ways to do it would be to stop having female cops.
Well, you don't want to ask the
wokies,
highly educated.
That's right. The highly educated would not agree with that.
So can I talk to you about the great city of Portland?
What used to be the great city of Portland.
Right. So, I mean, I'm sure many of you have heard the term Flovid out there, which is the combination
of George Floyd and COVID.
And George Floyd and COVID. Well, those two things came together in Portland, and it resulted in ballot measure 110, the Drug Addiction Treatment and Recovery Act. Well, that sounds nice.
Drug addiction and treatment. Sure, I want people who have addictions to drugs to get the care they need to get off of that. Yeah.
That is excellent. And so that meant that those possessing and using hard drugs in public would face no penalty other than a possible $100 citation waived should the user voluntarily enter drug treatment. Now, we had... All right, listen to all the smart people that thought this was great.
Yeah.
We had dozens of organizations. You had the editorial board of the Oregonian, the ACLU, let me see, we had the Drug Policy Alliance, all back this, and it came in at a sweet 60% pass.
On a referendum or something?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm saying, so the man on the street. So let's just say
the drug bill doesn't necessarily mean what it actually does.
Right. So asking the man on the street, the guy who's not looking forward to using drugs, let's just say somebody who lives in the neighborhood with family, he says, "Do you think that this would be a good idea to?" Well, what ended up being, what they ended up legalizing hard drugs.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Okay.
So you got people sitting out on the street corner shooting up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so people stopped going to Portland. Overdoses spiked.
Yeah.
Homelessness, 6,300 people. Violent crime spiked. People stopped going downtown because, well, it was...
Why would you go down there?
It was either dangerous or you just have to be...
And businesses flee because they can't run their business anymore because people are walking in and stealing stuff.
And guess what? Oregonians are starting to have second thoughts.
Yeah.
Right.
Well.
So yeah, if you had just asked the man on the street if you think this is a good idea, instead you had PhD policymakers.
Yes.
This is the thing that leftist intellectuals live in a world of ideas that do not correspond with reality.
Yes. Think about who are the people who fell for. What's the word? Not when you try to breed people, eugenics. Who are the people who fell for eugenics? It was the educated people.
Yeah.
Who are the people who felt that the Soviet Union was a workers' paradise? Who are the people in the West who felt?
Yes, Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, it was the so-called educated people. Educated people frequently fall for fine-sounding ideas that just aren't practical and don't work in the real world.
Yeah, you've got your theories and your PhDs and your dissertations and your bubble where all of you are reinforcing it, and finally, because that one what was it called? They're not even from Oregon. It's a New York-based nonprofit group that pumped $5 million into getting it passed. Wow. So was it really passed because the average Oregonian wanted it, or did you have New York money come pouring in? For us, it's like this dream happened. Oh, and then what did the dream get you? So then I was reading that, and then today, this very day, February 29th, you won't see another one of those for a while.
Yeah.
Said bill to recriminalize drug use moves forward in Oregon. Well. What do you know?
They might have learned something.
So
yeah.
at least they learned
What's that
something
saying?
after we've got our 1,000 overdoses and our 6,000 homelessnesses.
What's that old saying? A conservative is a liberal who's been mugged.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is basically Oregon got mugged from the stupid stuff that the liberals imposed on them, and now they're waking up.
Right, but you still had there was still a series of groups who just couldn't believe that that we're going back to that.
Going backwards. We're turning back the clock. All that stupid rhetoric about we do turn back the clock once a year. Yeah. It's a normal thing to do.
Yeah, you noticed how? Yeah, but didn't you notice how horrible life was? Oh, now we're going to go back to more jail and more prisons.
Yeah.
Well, you know what?
Didn't they bring up Nazis in there somewhere? I mean, that's the standard thing. Hitler did this.
I think a 10-2 vote. That's pretty.
Okay, that's pretty good.
That's pretty solid. And so this is the thing. You see the footage from Portland or Philadelphia or whatever.
Yeah.
So this is liberal idea of compassion.
Yeah.
Really, I think that the families of these, especially the people of the people who are on the street and the people who are dead, I think they'd be okay with them being in jail.
Yeah, and also this there's a pretty naive attitude about compassion that people who have never actually tried to work with the homeless or with street people or with people who have addictions, or when people who actually deal with people with addictions, they're pretty hard-nosed. They're strict, and they're.
You're right. You mean the people who are seeing it every day?
Yeah. So I was talking to the brother of a relatively famous actor about somebody we both knew who had an addiction problem, and I was surprised how hard-headed and strict he was about. You can't trust an addict. They're gonna steal from you.
Right.
They're gonna lie to you. They're gonna be violent. Yeah. He went through this whole list of all the things that this is the way it really works.
Yes. That's interesting because when I see somebody, I think to myself, is this person in this situation because there's no one in his family or his circle who is willing to help him out, or has he already burned all those bridges?
Well, see, the unfortunate thing about addiction is, yes, there are a lot of people who are willing to help them out, but the way that they help them is not solving the addiction problem. Mm-hmm. They might help them by giving them money. They might help them by doing all those kinds of things.
Or what you were just saying is, yes, I tried to help him, and he stole my money.
Yeah.
And he lied to me, and he
beat me up, stole my money, all this other kind of stuff. Yeah, because people who are addicts, they're not thinking correctly. The addiction has taken them over. So all this kind of naive compassion stuff just plain doesn't work. And that's the sort of thing that we're talking about here. People who are in college and they're not thinking about something practical. They don't have to go out and actually do it in the real world. They're just hearing theories, and it's fine sounding arguments. It sounds nice, it sounds like the right thing, but in the real world it simply doesn't work.
Right.
And that's the kind of situation we're running into, where you have to be educated, you have to be indoctrinated, which is really what we should say, is indoctrinated rather than educated, in order to believe some of these things.
Yeah, and let me go ahead and mention, we're not two guys who hate education,
no.
or that we are frustrated and bitter. No, we both graduated from college, by the way. Yes. So it's not like two guys who were going, wow, those stupid college kids. But we did it in a time where it was A, affordable, and B,
not insane.
Not insane.
Not insane. Yeah, I have nothing against actual education. It's just, so in terms of man on the street versus the so-called educated people, have you seen any of the interviews with people in Chicago about giving away all the things they're giving away to illegal aliens?
Ooh.
You know, they're giving away, they're giving them money, they're giving them housing, they're giving them all this stuff, and then you interview some poor people on the streets in Chicago, and they go, "What about us? You know, we're Americans.
I'm American. I've lived here my whole life.
I've been here for 3 generations, and how come these guys come in here illegally and you're giving? What about us?" And I completely sympathize with that.
Yeah.
Why can't we help the poor in America instead of handing out all these money and benefits to people who shouldn't be here anyway?
I know. Well, right. So the man on the street question might be. I think. You know, before the crisis hit, I think man on the street and educated man would say, "What do you? How do you feel about Chicago being a sanctuary city?" Well, before they actually moved in. Oh yeah, I think that,
right.
I think that's.
We
great.
should be compassionate.
We should be compassionate. Okay, here's 30,000
illegals, right?
And now, how do you feel about it?
Right.
So I think both sides were probably.
Yeah.
Both sides were kicked in the nuts, but didn't need to be. How did you not see it coming? When your police chief says we won't even turn over a criminal to ICE if they ask for it, because we are so compassionate.
Right.
Okay. What? So you're
compassion.
So compassion is putting criminals on your streets. Is that how I understand it? Well, that's the whole anti-incarceration.
Yeah. So speaking of compassion, you know, one of the things, most people are very compassionate on somebody who's going through a hard time, and you know, maybe they're down on their luck, maybe they're crying. You know, most people, it elicits compassion.
Yeah.
Right. So the man on the street, what would the man on the street say? Let's say you met a guy at the bar, and he was crying and he's upset, and you know you want to be compassionate, so you try to find out what the problem is, and it turns out that, well, somebody at work disagreed with his opinion.
Well, I would say that the man on the street would say, "Suck it up, Buttercup."
Yes.
That happens.
Yeah.
You cry, stupid crybaby.
Yes. But what do we see in universities? We have cry rooms, and we have, you know, people who are
snuggle time.
Yeah, people who have to go into special rooms with coloring books, with crayons and teddy bears and things because somebody said something that disagrees with their view of the world. That's the educated, smart college response to this, where any real person on the street would just say, "Come on, get over it."
Right.
Yeah.
How about if you said to the man on the street, "From each according to his ability, and to each according to his need"? He's like, "Well, what does that mean?"
Yeah.
That means we all work hard, and then we give more to people who need stuff than less to people who
and the man on the street is going to think, "Yeah, I know 20 of those guys. They're asking me for money every single day." And you know what I tell them? Screw off.
Yeah, go get a job.
Right, exactly, yeah.
But that is the basis for an ideology that has consumed the planet for 100 years and cost at least 100 million lives.
Yeah.
And is still alive and well on our campuses.
How about this one? You're at a family get-together, and you meet your attractive young niece, and it turns out she's been making money on the side sleeping with older men.
All right.
So she says, I mean, it's no different than marriage, right? I mean, marriage is just the same. Marriage and prostitution are the same thing. It's just sex in exchange for goods.
Right, and you're saying that could only come from a college-educated feminist.
Yeah, you have to take some, women's studies courses to think that even is anything other than
femlit major.
Yeah, because anybody else would just say you're a whore. Cut it out. You know, that's ridiculous.
Yeah,
but if you take some feminist literature classes or some something like that. Then
gender studies majors.
Maybe gender studies major. Then maybe they could convince you. Oh gosh, did I ever? I had to tell you the story about the woman who was majoring in women's studies. Who I was taking her out someplace to get her motorcycle fixed, and we had a discussion about how many children are born neither male nor female and they have to operate on them to make them either male or female.
Yeah, what super high numbers, right?
Yeah,
High
percentages.
percentages.
It was like 35% or some number like that. I said, look, I've been through Lamaze classes 5 times, right? We're childbirth classes 5 times. They teach you how to deliver a baby in the back of a cab when the cord is wrapped around the neck. Things that aren't going to happen. They give you all this information about these strange things that really aren't going to happen, but they want you to be prepared. Don't you think they'd mention that there's a 35% chance
that you won't know the sex of your
that it
child?
won't be clear what the sex of the child is? And she thought, But she just swallowed this information because the professor in the school in Georgetown.
Right. Yeah. Right. Okay. How about this? Along with that, so right, the man on the street question: can you know a child's sex at birth, or is the doctor just randomly assigning?
That would be a good one.
He would just be like,
"Yeah, what are you talking about?
Are you asking me a real question, you idiot?"
Yeah, right. I mean, how many people have ultrasounds to decide whether it's a boy or a girl?
Yeah, so they can decorate the room, so they can have their gender reveal party.
We don't have to be explicit about this, do we? I mean, isn't it obvious how they know?
But you'd have to go through some special training to say that doctors just assign without really they don't even know.
No reference.
Basically just guessing.
They're just saying, I don't know. Flip a coin. It's a boy, right? Yeah. How about this one? If you were to ask the man in the street, who are the dangerous people in society today? Like, who are the people we should really be watching out for?
I don't know. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking they might be thinking cartel people. They might be thinking of maybe some foreign government is sneaking in military-age men into our country. They think about real dangerous people. But, like, who do the educated people think are the dangerous people? Catholics, who...
Rad trads.
Yes, radical Catholics who, like, go to Mass. Those are the people who are somehow dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah. It gets a little ridiculous. And I think the problem is that our so-called educational institutions have become indoctrination centers, and they indoctrinate into some pretty stupid things.
Yes. I think of a liberal education as like a liberal arts major. It is, you're not teaching you stuff in the in the STEM sense, but teaching you how to think.
Yeah.
Well, what happened to that?
Right. Exactly. And
it's what to think.
Yeah, it's what to think. It's not how to evaluate arguments.
Right.
It's not how to reason.
Critical thinking.
Yes. Yeah. And I think a big problem is it used to be that at least some portion of the population had to argue for things that they didn't agree with. Like, you'd have a debate class or something.
Yes.
And you would
just
have
pick
to
out of a hat.
Yeah.
And you're on this team and you're on that team.
Yeah, so I pulled the thing out of the hat. Yeah. No, I have to defend abortion. Well, I don't believe in abortion. Tough.
Yeah.
It's your job is to defend it for this thing. And I think that is a part of education that we've lost. And then the other part of education that we've lost is just learning logic, and so that someone makes some claim, and you say, "Well, wait a minute, you're committing this fallacy," or
fallacies is a good one.
You can't make that kind of an argument based on what you're saying. That doesn't follow, or it becomes arguments against the man. It becomes other sorts of things that's not appropriate. That's not the way you evaluate an argument.
No, right. So you have committed ideologues who are willing to ignore evidence and like you're saying, all of the manner of arriving at the truth.
Yeah.
None of that is important because you decide the conclusion.
Yes.
I mean, really, this is.
All that matters is let's make sure that you get to this conclusion.
Right. We have thrown away the scientific method, which has basically given us everything that we have since the 16th century. Because we've already decided what the answers are, which is the opposite of how it works. And now, which we would think that, all right, well, that's going to take place in these squishy soft sciences No, now it's bleeding into medical school, for God's sake.
Yeah, I wouldn't limit it to the scientific method. It's also just rational thinking. So there are a lot of things that there's not really any science involved. It's just a question of are you properly applying logic to the information that you think you have on this subject, or whatever the whatever
Socratic
the
method, or just how to properly think rather than conclusion first.
Yes. Yes, it is conclusion first. So I guess the bottom line is, the people I would least trust nowadays, because of the situation in our universities, I would trust the man on the street more than I would trust the educated person.
Yeah, because the man on the street he's just going by experience and common sense. And you would think experience and common sense plus additional education would give that guy the advantage. But somehow the additional education has turned into discarding real-world experience and common sense.
That's right. That's right.
And then plus now we're finding out that most of our great leaders are just a bunch of plagiarists who didn't come up with their own ideas anyway.
Exactly.
I saw one of them. The guy just copied and pasted from Wikipedia into his dissertation.
I know. These people who are supposedly educated, they're really not educated. They're just good at faking it and lying their way through the system. Yeah. All right. Kind of amazing.
All right. Let's just call it. And now you just ruined my whole voting method here. I thought I had just come up with a formula that would save us from all this argument.
Well,
follow the smart, follow the educated.
No.
All right.
I mean, I'm less and less enthralled with voting for various reasons, but that solution is not the right one.
Well, yes, too many people are voting. That's what we can. That's a tease for future topic.
Another topic, yes. All right, cheers. Thanks so much for listening to Beer and Conversation with Pigweed and Crowhill. Remember to visit us at pigweedandcrowhill.com or send us an email at pigweedshow@gmail.com.